what I see is we've had it happen at Pilmo. We just had an event. I mean, I asked them at the end, I said, how many of you got 3 things you want to do when you get back? You know, everybody in the room raised their hand. I said, how many of you got 10 things? 2/3 of the room at 20, half the room 30, or 1/4 of the room. I said, well, here's the problem. You're going to go back, and 95% of you aren't going to do a damn thing.
That's Ken Hardison, lawyer and founder of the Personal Injury Lawyers Marketing and Management Association, PILMA, on applying advice in a law firm, stating what we already know to be true. Gathering inspiration to change something is easy, and there are plenty of blogs and TED Talks, coaches, frameworks, and plans. But when we come back down to business, making change happen is hard. What if the real trick to changing something is changing how you think about it, how you approach it, how you measure it? What if the real trick to applying change in the business of a law firm over the long term is changing the way you apply yourself, with a little help from legal tech, to the problem? That's what we're talking about today on Lawsome. Legal tech, change, and how to make it apply in your firm. Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that's not afraid to cry in order to get what we want. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I am the holy host of guacamole, Jake Sanders, and with me is the tantalizing tortilla tactics of Paul Where You Been Julius, who drives a Pinto. Paul, what do you order when you go out for Mexican food?
So I am a purist, and I am very blessed and lucky to live in a community that has fantastic options for Mexican food. I have to go with the carne asada taco, and it's got to be in a fresh corn tortilla with just raw onion and cilantro. That's it. You do that right, like I could eat 10 of those things, man. I know. Cilantro's key. And so you don't have that genetic problem where cilantro tastes like soap or whatever. Or you do, and you like to eat soap. Yeah, I mean, what do you think I'm doing in the shower? I opened the door for you. Just ran right through. Tell them what's on the show. What's on the enchilada today? There it is. We discuss implementing new processes and technology to your law firm with an article from lawyerist.com. And then we talk legal tech, consulting and marketing with lawyer, podcaster, consultant, and tech evangelist Jared Correia. And as always, we go high and inside on our guests with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The hot take today is from lawyers.com. It's from Jared Correia, who has an amazing, confidential, Ask Abby kind of column here where lawyers write in and Jared answers them questions about law firm practice, management, marketing. This one's from January last year, but it was a lawyer in Woodstock is struggling implementing tech. It starts out like this. Nobody ever listens to me. At work, at home, doesn't matter. It's like I'm talking to a wall. But the worst is when I have to onboard any new technology at work. I mean, I think I employ adults. But this is like trying to tell my kids to do something. They look at me for a second and then run off and do whatever the hell they want. Like when we didn't just have a very specific conversation about expectations. Invariably, I will tell everyone in the office that we need to be using a new piece of software, and 3 months later, no one has even logged in. I give up. So the answer is amazing because it's very typical. It's very Jared. But how about you give the answer And then we can maybe provide some hot take here, but Jared has a great answer for this. Obviously overwhelmed, but wanting to help lawyer with tech situation that is probably just happening across America.
And I think I just want to put a note in here too. This isn't when it just comes to software. I think this is just about any kind of change or process or anything like that. I think this fits, but I can't even pretend that we're gonna cover this entire epic, must-read, probably 2,000-word article. But he says, when a managing attorney introduces something new into a law firm, often it's a new technology program, but it doesn't have to be. There are 4 stages at which the staff should be involved. Number 1, vetting. Number 2, selection. Number 3, implementation. Number 4, maintenance. And he says, you likely involve your staff in 0 of those stages currently. And this, I think, is the whole premise of this article.
The enchilada.
It is the enchilada. And he breaks it down eloquently, thoroughly, humorously, but also it hits pretty close to the bone, I think, on some of these points.
Right.
I think my hot take, number 2, the selection one, is something he comes back to, and I think it involves something that I see happen at other companies. It's about buy-in. If you come to people and say, we're going to do this because it's a budget thing, or because I wanted to do it, or, because they gave us a great deal on it, or,
right.
Whatever, that's fine. But if you get everybody to try it out and everybody chooses it, now you're talking, and he says this is something that we tried, we liked, and we picked. So everybody's got a hand in making this work. And I think that's kind of key to getting any kind of change made, is that if people are doing it because they're being forced, as opposed to if they feel like they played a part in it and are part of the change that's going to happen, it's very motivating, and it's easier.
And you know what's interesting? Because I was one of my older jobs, worked at the museum, and we would often have brainstorming sessions where we would come up with ideas for programs at the museum. And they would eventually go with something, but they would have hundreds of ideas given to them. And we would have felt that we had participated, but it wouldn't be ours. It was interesting because the idea, I think that maybe people are like, yeah, I'll make it seem like it's their idea, but I still need this for management purposes. And what I think that may happen, but the real magic, I think, you may be able to get them on board, vetting and selection, but you may end up with 300 different ideas.
Yeah,
so
true.
Then you have to start figuring out, okay, hold on, wait. I think the true magic of what Jared talks about and his service at Red Cave Legal is in 3 and 4, the steps that he talks about: implementation and maintenance. Because we, as marketers, live on getting them past vetting and selection. If I'm marketing something, or these software solution, or legal tech, or case management, or document management, or any of these, HR or insurance, or, there's an app, all of this tech stuff could happen at your law firm. The magic happens when somebody implements it and has your hand, and is sort of like Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore ghosting you and coming around and helping you work the clay on the potting wheel. If you guys haven't seen Ghost, then you'll just have to go see that movie to understand what I'm talking about. But you need hands-on implementation and then maintenance. That's the thing that Jared hits on, is that you have to check in. How's it going? What's going on? You don't wait until 3 months later and then say, what's going on with that? You have a plan on how you maintain the implementation of the thing you selected and vetted. I think you have to work this process backwards. And I think someone who cares thinks like that.
That's a great point. Because no plan, think about what you just said, because everybody's got a plan and it always goes to hell.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yep. Invariably. And that's sort of the genius of what Jared's talking about, and it's sort of the synthesis of these two worlds that are vying for the lawyer's time, which is business coaching, business developing, and then agency support with software. And these two things seem like they're conflicting, but I think the true winner of that is the people who can make, regardless of the selection, implementation and maintenance, accountability, follow through. That's what everybody will remember. They won't remember that it was the best marketing pitch, sales, or whatever it was. They'll remember that in 3 months it saved their time, or reduce their workload, or help them focus on this or that. And you got to have people who help you package the way you're going to be perceiving the success of this legal tech solution. And it has to be writ large. We, just like what you were saying, we chose this, we've decided, and now we are looking at it and we're testing it. And so people are like, oh, by the way, I'm feeling this about the new, system, and they'll be willing to participate. But your point is the most important. This isn't just for tech. This is for every process, every change, they switch desks up. It could be really small things, but you have to think like this. And Jared's someone who thinks like this for you, because maybe you can't keep up on all this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes too, what we run into, I know I've run into this, running a business myself and stuff, is sometimes it's like, hey, you know what? We're going with this because I'm the boss and that's what I say. I got 50 things on my plate. I really don't have time to sit down and ask how everybody feels about this payroll software. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, change is hard. Change is hard for anybody. I mean, it's like now I got to log into a different thing. Everybody's used to doing it this way. There's going to be a million questions. It's going to be a nightmare for the first, month, because nothing's going to be where it used to be. It's like moving, like.
Oh yeah, but I like that, the metaphor of physical location and physical safety, and just the things that keep you feeling like you're living your life. If those get removed or switched around, it can kind of mess with folks. So having someone, I think we're just really talking about how change is so crazy. Change is so crazy. So many options. The true gift is discernment, and the true gift that you could give yourself is trusting someone to help you get there. Because alone, I just think, you're just going to get too overwhelmed. And you're either going to be wearing the boss pants, or you're going to be telling folks what to do, or you're going to be too democratic too woke to even get anything done, because every voice has a seat at the table. Yeah. That's
Ideas
not true.
Will die in meetings.
So, don't.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. We'll start a committee about it. We'll start a committee about the chatbot service that we're going to start. Yeah. And it turns out the chatbot isn't diverse enough. It's mostly speak and spell.
I like the idea of breaking this down, though, and saying, look, here's the 4 things you need to do when you approach this stuff. And there's going to be problems anywhere. Right. Honestly, familiarity, it's tough. If you walked into a law firm and said, hey, how would you like to be more efficient, get more money for less work? I'm sure everybody would be like, yeah, totally. But if you come in the other way and be like, hey, you know what? We're going to implement this system. So that means you're going to need to scan in all your documents, bump your payment system and CRM to integrate into this, and set up a bunch of zaps so that your phone intake and everything connects all into this stuff. Going to take about 6 weeks. You're probably going to be working 70, 80 hours a week. But when you're done, it's going to be boss. Nobody, like, what?
Yeah. But what's good is someone to help you just think about it, because the answers are there. There is a technological solution out there. There is something that can make your life easier. There is an answer from one of your associates or, a shareholder that you don't know. You can go and quest and get all that data, but you have to have somebody. And that's why they're asking, Jared on this Lawyerist article, how can I help? And you need to have somebody who can just help you start. But what Jared does is helps you finish and see you through and slap you around. I think and people like the coaching angle. You're either in and you want to get barked at, by a personal trainer, or you want to be in a group class, or you just want to be on an elliptical. But, people know that they need to work. They need to motivate themselves. It depends on how you find that motivation to continue past just sort of like entertaining the ideas of dreaming and actually doing the work of making the dream come true.
Yeah.
So that's what Jared does. We talked to him about this. He's fantastic, real, has been a lawyer, has been a consultant, has, spoken to bar associations across the country, 12 years deep into the podcast game, one of the podfathers for sure. But
started a tech company for lawyers.
Still running it, involved in heavy, stuffy fights where he throws stuffed animals at passersby. Sounds dangerous.
And children.
And children. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to this extremely inspirational and mildly abusive interview right now.
Let's go.
Lawson continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
We're getting updates on that developing story where a local law firm was buried in leads from the internet. We go now to our own Stacey Williams, who's live with the details.
Chaos. Seen here outside a prominent law firm where just hours ago, a digital marketing campaign from Consultwebs went live, burying the entire building in clicks, calls, and leads. A few paralegals managed to get out, but some of the staff are still stuck inside trying to sign all of the cases coming in.
I mean, it seemed like right after the first call came in, we couldn't keep up. Qualified lead after lead came in. We were ranking higher than ever on Google by 10 in the morning. The likes on our Facebook page exploded by noon. My mom, my own mother, called the firm asking about a blog we wrote last week about handling insurance adjusters. And that's when the chats came in. The chats. Oh, the chats.
It wasn't until I tried to head out for lunch that I noticed the leads were starting to come into the windows on the second level. Our receptionist started to tie together extension cords to create a rope to lower herself to safety. But I guess that's when the banner ads went live, and I blacked out.
Oh, wow. So it appears that the leads are lightening up a bit. Here comes more of the staff making their way out from under the heavy curtain of leads. Sir, can you tell us what happened? Should lawyers hire Consultwebs for their digital marketing agency?
Look, I'll just say this. We were not ready for the leads to come in so heavy and consistently. If you're marketing your law firm online, call Consultwebs, but just be prepared for it to go better than expected.
Go to www.consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, for a Lawsome interview.
Jared Correia is the host of the Legal Toolkit podcast and teaches at Concord Law School, Suffolk University Law School, and Solo Practice University. Outside the education vocation, Jared is a practicing attorney, bar association administrator, and the CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting, which offers subscription-based law firm business management consulting and technology services for solo and smalls. Jared is also the founder and COO of Gideon Software, an intelligent messaging and predictive analytics tool built exclusively for law firms. And if all that wasn't enough, Jared's decided to add one more notch to the belt by showing up to Lawsome today. Jared, how are you, sir?
Oh, yeah. This is very exciting. This is bucket list stuff for me. So thank you for that intro. I really appreciate it. I'm never going to do another podcast again after this, I don't think.
It's pretty decent bio. And if it's made up, we don't want to know. We're just going to keep rolling.
Only half of it's made up.
Yeah, that's good. So you do a ton of education CLEs across the country. I see you at bar associations, all across America. What do you think are the quintessential topics that you find yourself having to cover again and again when you teach lawyers about, marketing and management and sort of what you do? What are those topics?
Good question. So yes, I'm everywhere, sometimes too many places. My wife complains occasionally. She's like, why are you in French Lick, Indiana again?
Right.
I'm like, they get a great golf course. Larry Bird is from there.
Muncie,
what more do you want?
Yeah.
So in terms of like the stuff I teach, like the big thing, like by far, is technology for lawyers. I don't know if you've heard, but lawyers are not really great with technology. And that extends to like almost every area of practice, right? So the first thing is like, I get lawyers who don't know what the cloud is still. So I explain that. So people will call me and they're like, hey, can you tell me about the cloud? And I'm like, quick question, do you have a Gmail account? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, you're on the cloud. That's either good news or bad news, depending on where this conversation goes. So I talk with people a lot about technology basics, really, because the bar is relatively low. And now that there is an ethical competency rule about technology competency, like that's been a bigger thing. I'm talking to more bars about that. I'm out in California in October doing a program on that.
Yeah.
I do like Q&As on technology. And a lot of lawyers are just like drowning in software. They know there's like legal specific software out there. They know there's generic business software out there. They don't know what to pick. So they kind of need somebody to like explain to them what it does and then drill down to what they need. But like for purposes of your show and what you guys talk about, like now technology is invading marketing, right? Like a lot of lawyers don't know what drip campaigns are. A lot of lawyers don't use email management tools. A lot of lawyers don't look at analytics for emails. Like they don't know that this stuff is out there. They don't look at analytics for social media. So I talk to people about like management tools, how to save themselves time and money, and then like getting at the data and making more intelligent decisions about what they're going to do to market their practices. And I know that's probably in your wheelhouse.
It's way in our wheelhouse. We just parked in our alley. We just opened up a double garage. I'm in the back of the hood looking at the engine.
Park that car like Ace Ventura? Like a glove.
Drive with the head out the window. No, it's interesting because that probably goes into this next kind of question, because Legal Toolkit, this podcast that you started, what's your thought on utility in legal industry with podcasts? Like, did you start this focus specifically on the legal tech side, and then there's podcasts that just focus on law? What do you think podcasts specifically are useful? Do you see a lot of your lawyers, across bar associations, are they listening to podcasts? And then two, how do you blend that, like, and create what you learn on the road and bring it back to Legal Toolkit?
Oh, yeah. So I like to think of Legal Toolkit as the second best legal podcast in America. We were number one for a while, but then this show came out, and now we just like can't compete anymore. We're trying.
Very humble. Very humble. No.
We're now like the Baltimore Orioles of podcasting. Something happens along the way.
And we think of ourselves as the Mets, so we can just meet somewhere in underdog.
Oh, great. All right. Well, the Orioles are still worse. So I started doing this podcast like 12 years ago, believe it or not. And I kind of I didn't start it, actually. I kind of fell into it. Like this company had started a podcast, and it was being produced by this other company, which is Legal Talk Network, which is still around, obviously. That's where I do the podcast. And they were like, the host of this show is really boring. So we're looking for a new host. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I'm like, what do I do? They're like, you're just talking to a microphone. I'm like, oh, I can do that. So they get you the equipment, you talk into the microphone, and then all of a sudden, like 12 years later, here I am. So it wasn't like an intentionality for me. Like I wasn't like building out this podcast and being like, man, it's 2009. I know podcasts are going to be huge, so I'm gonna roll with this, or 2008 or whenever it was. So I'm just like, so I know there are legal specific podcasts out there. There are interesting ones. I know a lot of them are highly rated, but like, man, I left the practice of law because it was boring, honestly. Like, I don't like doing substantive law practice. There's so many strictures on what you can do. I like to be more creative than that. So my scene is really like legal technology, legal process improvement, legal marketing, that kind of thing. And I thought that this podcast would be like a good place to explore those issues, like whatever issues I want. Yeah. And to Legal Talk Network's credit, they let me have anybody on that I want. They even let me have you guys on. So I had to go through a few levels of red tape to get that going, but I made it happen.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Paul,
we had to rough up a couple guys too.
This podcast probably comes out before ours does on Legal Talk Network. Speaking of red tape. We got engineers and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I try to focus on stuff that's of interest to me, which is mostly technology, marketing, and innovations in the legal industry, because I don't see a ton of that. So I try to highlight people, including people who are like from groups that aren't often highlighted. Like honestly, like, not to sound like a douche, but I like to have like a lot of women on the show, and I like to have minorities on the show just to give people exposure that don't normally get exposure in the legal industry. Because when I do go to these conferences, like, I'm 41, I'm the youngest dude there by like a mile. So it's me and like all these old white guys. So I kind of want to break things up a little bit. And in terms of podcast listening, that's a great question. Like, I get a lot of lawyers who want to do their own podcasts, and they're like, is there utility for it?
Yeah, right.
And the listenership is crazy. Like, I have had to hide in public places, believe it or not, because people have recognized me from the podcast. So I've been on a train and someone has heard my voice, and all of a sudden I hear, "Is that Jared?" And I duck, frankly. I'll be at a kid's birthday party and somebody will be like, "Are you Jared Correia?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "I listened to your show." And of course my family's like, "You're the worst." But
and I love it. But you're highlighting a real essential reality is that your family doesn't listen to your show.
No.
Your family doesn't care about you.
No,
like you're like, "I'm a big deal." And they're like, "Yeah, you are."
Like, I'm legal famous. My kids are like, "No, you're not. You're a loser."
Yeah, totally. You're just Jared.
Yeah, and my kid's gone by my first name, which is even worse. But like, I think the thing is, like, this stuff is evergreen. It stays out there for a long time. It's got real validity in search. Like, people find you. I still get calls from the first podcast I did. The first podcast I really organized and did myself was on trust accounting. And everybody's like, "That's stupid. No one's going to listen to a podcast on trust accounting." And I got a call last week from somebody who's like, "I listened to your podcast." And I was like, "I don't remember anything about my life 12 years ago." But I guess that podcast is still out there and people are listening to it.
Unreal.
Podcasts are great.
So to dive in a little bit deeper into some of the marketing, your company Red Cave Legal provides subscription-based business management consulting services for law firms and lawyers. So can you give us an overview of how it works? And we're in particular, I'm really intrigued about how you break things out based on firm size, like from solos all the way up to the bigger corporations and legal institutions. Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, and that's another problem. I have like too many companies, but this is one of them. So I used to work for the state of Massachusetts essentially as their chief consultant. So I did that for almost 10 years, and that was like a nonprofit gig. And then I had like 2 kids in daycare at the same time, and I had a mortgage, and I had a car payment. And I was like, "God damn, I actually have responsibilities and have to pay for things." So I'm like, I can't be working for a nonprofit anymore. So I started my own consulting company. The thing about working for the state was like, it was a free service, so that was good. But the problem was I was like triaging everybody. So I'd get people coming in and they'd ask me these questions, and we'd have like a great conversation. And then I'd hear from them 3 years later, and I'd be like, "So how did everything go? Did you implement any of the stuff we talked about?" And they're like, "No, and I don't even remember what we talked about, and that's why I'm back." So we'd have like the same conversation 3 years later. It was like Groundhog Day. Like Ned Ryerson's popping into my office like every day, and I am having that conversation over and over again. So I was like, I got to do this in a different way. So when I decided to do consulting on my own, I kind of came up with this notion of like the Netflix of law practice management consulting, right? So like, I'm your guy. You access me like every month, like for a couple hours at least. And then we talk about your issues. We have a running task list that we offer. And then, we lob those things off because lawyers just aren't going to do that on their own. They need somebody to make them feel bad that they're not doing the work they should be doing. And I'm that guy. I'm the guy who makes lawyers feel bad. So people have taken to that idea, and I feel like they're actually getting things done and their revenue's increasing. So it's a much different and better model for me. So yeah, I have different pricing points based on the number of lawyers at a firm. And the reason I do that is because I'm a hardcore believer in that more lawyers, more problems. Like if you're adding 2 or 3 lawyers to the mix, it's harder to make decisions. A lot of them have different ideas. There's a lot of generational issues. So it's just more work for me. So that's why I break it out that way. And I tell people that, like, I'm very honest about that. And I say, you're also a bigger firm. You're making more revenue. You can afford to pay more. So that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. and that's work for me.
Mm-hmm. What do most people have problems with? Like, what's the common thing? Like, what do you're having these deja vu moments with these firms. Like, what is it that you're constantly telling them to do that they don't do?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So like, I think the biggest thing for law firms is like consistency. They bounce around all the time because they don't have any plan of action. So lawyers are like, one day they'll come to the office, they'll put out like a million fires, and they'll be like, you know what? I'm gonna start a podcast. And they go crazy for a week about podcasting, and then they just pop in the next week, and they're like, damn if I don't want to do a video series on divorce. And then they're hot to trot on that. And then they leave it aside a week later. So like what I try to do with law firms is say, look, man, you need like a plan. We need to do A, B, and C. And you actually need to finish A before you get to B. And then you need to roll out A consistently so that people actually follow what you do. But in general, that's like the biggest. Lawyers have a lot of issues, between me and you and the million people listening. But like that's one of their biggest issues is the consistency factor. They just can't do it, which is one of the reasons I switched over to this like more consistent protocol, which has been really helpful. And in addition to like the private clients I have, I've also got member benefits with bar associations. So I'm able to contract out what I used to do at the state bar, but do it in a more effective way, I think.
Because that's really what it is. The perennial theme that we see on the show is that people go to these camps, go to these inspiring seminars, come back littered with ideas, and you make your marketing monkeys dance, and then nothing happens. And then the unfortunate reality is it's something that we call restless marketing syndrome.
Oh, I like that. You guys should patent that. Trademark, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, it's in the process. I have a certification pending.
Nice.
But yeah, the point is that it's hard to tell when the results will show up. We had Charlie Heck on the show, and she was talking about expectations is really the idea. You're knocking on this door, but you're not waiting for someone to open it. But you feel like you've created an opportunity because you knocked.
Yeah.
You're not waiting for someone to knock on the door. You're just knocking on everybody's door.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, it's interesting because it isn't a lawyer-specific problem. I would hope that most people understood the small business owner, your cupcake dream, your small machine shop, your whatever it is, even your own consulting business has this problem. You probably have a marketing problem for your marketing company. So it's hard. It gets very meta. But
no, you're totally right about that. That's a great way to put it. And I like your analogy of camp, right? So that reminds me of this time I was in band camp. But I won't get into that on this show.
Okay. I actually went to band camp. So there are some pretty
what
interesting.
What instrument did you play?
Saxophone.
Oh, that's pretty sweet though.
Yeah, jazz camp. It was It was tough, but I failed running one scale. And I got into like the subpar combo. So it was really tough. And so from then on, I run my scales like I had to get embarrassed. It was interesting, though.
You're just born at the wrong time. I feel like you should have been Billy Joel's sax guy in the 80s. Like that guy got a lot of work.
Oh, maybe too much, too. Every sax in the 80s got work. That's without a doubt. Right. Early 90s, that's when sax started dying out. There was the great sax die-up is what we call it.
That's right. I think there's a Wikipedia page on that.
They're heralded by Kenny G's curls, strangled like the Sargasso Sea of soprano saxophones. Listen, you're talking about tech.
Yeah.
And I think the most important part, you said you're perennially talking at bar associations about tech because it touches on marketing, it touches on management, it touches on all of these ideas. Let's talk about Gideon, your other company. So we said it's an intelligent messaging and predictive analytics tool. Does that work on a subscription base? How does that go? What's the technology there, and what made you create that? Because that probably came from a problem you had at consulting. So what's the genesis for Gideon, and how does it help?
So it's a chat bot essentially for law firm websites at this time, but we're building it out to be like a really full scale intake system. I can't take credit for that one. That was not even my idea. I have a partner in that business, his name's Alon, and he came up with that. I get approached by people all the time to join companies and to take equity in companies, and I've never done it before. But I was like, this is like a really good idea. I like it. Nobody else is really doing this. I think that this would be really useful in legal. It touches on technology and marketing. Intake's going to be a big thing because, client management is flooded right now with companies. But intake is kind of like a really difficult issue for lawyers that I don't think anybody has really solved yet. So we're essentially trying to solve for that. So the idea was to create something that was scalable. And we didn't want to be like a dev shop that was building out specific bots for a law firm. So what we did was we put together like a chatbot builder for lawyers, which is essentially you can build a chatbot with no coding, just kind of automated. So you don't have to have secretaries or live receptionists on your site. We walk people through, we qualify them, and then we can convert the lead directly through the chat and set up appointments for lawyers that way. And we're still in beta. We've got about 50 law firms and something like 500 users in the beta right now. And we've been getting really good results. We've been seeing like a lot more conversions using the chatbot than other methods. So happy with that. And we'll probably be out of beta September 1st. But yeah, it's going well. People are into it. I think it's like a new thing in legal that hasn't been done particularly well to this point. It hasn't been, I shouldn't say that, but hasn't been done to like a scalable level at this point. And so we're really interested in launching that out of beta and seeing how far we can take it. And if you want to access it for free, now would be the time.
Do it.
Do
We'll
it.
put a link in the show notes, man.
Yeah, awesome.
So talking about intake, talking about consulting, talking about all this stuff. You've been there, you've done it. If you had one piece of legal marketing or firm management advice you could give our listeners that they could implement like right now or today that would help them be more successful, what would that be?
So I've been booed off of stages for this, and tomatoes have been thrown at me. But I'm like a big data guy. Like, and I'm not trying to make a pun, like big data guy. I'm just saying I like data, which is, I know, a weird thing. So one of the things with Gideon that I really like is like one of the things we're going to be pushing for is predictive analytics, and this is really interesting to me. So the idea that like you can take this new case and compare it to like 7,000 or 8,000 old cases and make predictions based on that, about how much money you're going to make, about what kind of client this is going to be, about who's going to be doing the work, about the length of time you take that case on. I love that ability to like predict things and get to a point where your practice is more stable because you know what's coming through the door. So I would tell people, lawyers out there, like you should access any free data analytics tools that are available to you. And there's more than you think. Like just from a simple marketing standpoint, like Twitter's got built-in analytics. You can see how your posts are doing. You can see when it's the best time to post. You can see what kinds of posts get the best response, the most shares, the most views. LinkedIn's got similar features, even on their free service. All your email marketing tools, as I said before, they've got really nice baked-in analytics features as well. Lawyers don't even look at this stuff. And I think if you're the lawyer who's going to do it, even at an extremely basic level, that's a massive competitive advantage in maybe the most competitive small business vertical there is, which is legal, because there's just so many lawyers out there. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say. Like find the free analytics, and then once you get into it, you can see what kind of power data will have to change your law firm. And then you can get a little bit more discreet with it and start doing other interesting things that nobody's going to touch you on in another 30 years until lawyers catch up on this.
Yeah.
I have a quick follow-up, and it just made me think that if people should, what you're advocating for is for people to look at the data and then let the inspiration and sort of what it shows you inform you in a way that, I don't know, it feels like it's like a sort of not an osmosis thing, but you sort of take a look and you have something to interpret your thoughts by. And so you're taking your restless marketing syndrome and you're running it through some mediating force, yeah, but then I was thinking, then you get on the other end, and what you were talking about is maybe they've attached to the wrong metrics. Maybe now they're so focused on data that they still forget that interpretation is the main goal. And I love that you're
that's a good point.
Well, your answers aren't tech and done, period. It's tech and then a follow-up subscription service where we make sure that there's accountability and that you understand what's going on. And that's where it's really missing. And I feel like they have somebody, a good friend, that understands the law firm and then the complications and then the analysis paralysis and then the idea that data isn't the end in itself.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. You're like Immanuel Kant. What's going on
Well,
right now?
no.
My mind is blown.
I
It
got
just
well,
flows,
no.
man.
Well, but it's interesting because sense making is the answer. Data isn't the answer.
Yeah.
But if you get people looking at data and then they take the wrong things away from it, then you've created a dumbass, who's like, our likes are down, our likes are tremendously down. And you're like, okay, you need to chill. And it's tough because, we've done it in competitive marketing where a person has approached one of our clients and said, did you know your ranking is here? And your current company is doing this. And so what you do is you talk to prospective clients and bring their attention to something negative. But if you give a lawyer a data buffet, it's going to be tough if they don't know how to discern what matters.
Absolutely.
And I love that your main jive and your gig and the way you invest your time in companies and then run your consulting business is helping them make sense and then making better decisions and learning what to ignore. Maybe that data isn't all there. There's a ton of it that's bad.
No, that's a great point. So one of the things we're doing is like filtering down the data.
And
then creating dashboards to kind of put rails on it. Like this is the important data. This is why it's meaningful. And you don't necessarily need to look at that as much as you think you do.
Right. Yeah. But no one looks at it now. So it's interesting. Yeah. There's this weird, you're thirsty in the middle of an ocean or something. It's like, it's like, the answer is here, but you're not using it. But then if you do it too much, it could be a curse.
You're bringing the heat today, man. That's like some Samuel Taylor Coleridge stuff now, man. I'm impressed.
It's interesting though, because a lot of it is validating a hypothesis. And right. I think a lot of it is that gets to it. Like if you don't know how to, so many people get this thing in their head, lawyers, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. Well, that's tough in marketing because we're always asking questions we don't know the answer to, and these metrics just operate in a void without some kind of connection or interpretation. So that's
that's a great point. Like having the willingness to like try something and learn from it and maybe not do it right and fix it. Like I love doing that, but that's not the typical lawyer.
Yeah,
motivation.
Right. Well, Jared, people probably want more of this consulting quiche that you're serving hot and fresh on the Lawsome podcast today. If they want to find you on the internet, how's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Do not go to my MySpace page. No, I'm just kidding. So 2 websites probably are the best places to go. So my consulting website is redcavelegal.com. And then for Gideon, the software company, that's gideon.legal. So those are 2 places you can find out information about me. And then you can find emails and phone numbers for me. So hit me up.
5 questions we ask everyone.
Number 1, what was the last book you read?
Oh my God, the children's book or like adult book division? I read a lot of children's books.
Good Night Moon again. Come on.
Yeah, I know that it was definitely one. It was a book called Marvin Red Post is Dead or something like that by Louis Sacker, who wrote like the Wayside School series. So like I read that to my kids last night.
Nice.
My son was really angry at the ending. Like he was upset. Wow. I feel like it was like his first fan service moment where he was like, this was not supposed to end this way. I'm now going to write some fanfic on the internet that changes the ending. So that was like a really interesting experience. Because usually my kids, they let the books wash over them. So not highly recommended, but I probably have not read an adult book in probably like 10 years. Can I tell you can I give you a recommendation for an adult book if people want to read it?
Yeah.
All
right. So there's a great book by this guy from, I think it's Sweden. His name's like Per Lagervist. And he wrote a book called Barabbas in like 1968. Fantastic book. Check it out.
On it. All right. Number 2, what's your favorite place?
My favorite place is the Hilton Waikoloa in the Big Island of Hawaii. That's where my wife and I spent my honeymoon. Awesome spot.
Nice. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
All right. I'm really bad. Your listeners are going to hate me for this, but I pretty much don't listen to a lot of legal stuff. Obviously, the Lawsome podcast is on my list, but I'm on like a lot of sports sites. I'm a kick-ass fantasy baseball player, so I like ESPN. I'm on Bill Simmons' site, The Ringer, and that's where I spend a lot of my time online.
Cool.
Wait, is this going to be broadcast out?
Oh, yeah.
All right. No, I'm good. I'm good with that. I'll stick with that answer.
Okay. Number 4. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
I'm going to zag. I'm going to say relish. So I feel like relish could be a meal. I couldn't like eat ketchup or mustard, but I feel like if I rolled with some relish, I'd be like, I feel pretty good. If I could get like an unlimited supply of relish on a desert island, that's what I would do. And then I'd have a soccer ball that I named Wilson. Would eat relish too.
That's a very vivid picture you just painted. Okay.
I thought about this a lot.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Last one. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like I never stop working. I will tell you what I do like to do. This is going to make me sound like a terrible person, but I like to throw soft things at children, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like my son's 8. He loves to like play rough games and stuff like that. So we have these things that we call like stuffed animal fights, where we have like 1,000 stuffed animals upstairs, and we just stand on one side of the room. We just whip these stuffed animals at each other and try to hit each other. That's a great way to unwind.
That sounds great.
As long you don't want to hit anybody with any of the eyes or any of the buttons, but like it's really fun. We call them stuffy fights.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.